Okay. All right. So to start, can you just say and spell your real name, please?
Jessica Michna, Jessica Michna.
Great. Before you get into character for real, how did you get interested in Katharine Wright's story?
Well, I've always been interested in the Wright brothers. And then when I started reading several years ago about Catherine's impact on their work, I thought, wow, most people don't know about Catherine. So I felt it my sworn duty to get Catherine out there.
So you have no ties to Dayton, Ohio, or the Dayton region? It's like,
Not today. We'll be in Ohio next week. This
okay.
coming week, next week, we'll be in
Okay.
Ohio.
But
But
you
that's
yourself did not grow up in Dayton or have any family in
no,
Dayton?
I have one daughter in Kettering and one daughter in Lebanon, Ohio.
Really?
But
Okay.
no, I'm originally from Pennsylvania, but a transplant to
Oh,
Wisconsin.
okay. All right. Okay. And then, so how did you get, you just learned about Catherine's story through like watching the documentary or what, reading
Oh
a book
no,
or?
many years ago, I could remember reading, I mean, I've read quite a bit about the Wright brothers over my lifetime, and they would often mention this little Catherine Wright in the background. And so I started just looking for information on her. And then when I discovered the impact, as I say, that she had on her brother's work, I thought, I've got to get her out there. People have to know about Catherine Wright, the women behind the Wright Flyer, I like to call it.
Well, hey, let's get started then. So Catherine, can you tell us a little bit about your background? When were you born? Where were you born? Like in a hospital, at home, or?
Oh, heavens, no, I was born at home in 1874. I was born in the little house on Hawthorne Street in Dayton, Ohio. Now, I've got to point out, only myself and my brother Orville were born in the house on Hawthorne Street, and I share something very special with my brother Orville. I was born on his third birthday, and Orville has always told me the moment he saw me, he knew we would be the best of friends. And we have indeed remained best of friends all these years. He is my
He was great,
dearest
by the way.
brother. I'm the only daughter in the family, incidentally, and the youngest, but seven children of my dear parents, Bishop Milton Wright and my dear mother, Susan. Most people don't realize that my brother Wilbur was actually born in Indiana, near Millville, Indiana. You see, Papa at that time was a missionary. He wasn't a bishop quite then, and they moved him around quite a bit. He had a little farm in Indiana, and that is where my brother Wilbur was born. And so
Just,
we've
oh,
always shared a close relationship.
um, can I ask about your childhood also? I know your mother died when you were quite young.
Yes, my mother died when I was just a little child. Barely, I hadn't even started high school at that time. And she had been ill for some time. My brother Wilbur, in fact, looked after my mother. She was very ill with consumption. I believe the modern term is tuberculosis. In fact, she would become so weak that Wilbur would carry her up and down the stairs. He stayed home with her for several years and cared for my dear mamma. Upon her passing, well, it was difficult being a little girl in a house full of men, but it was my brother Lauren. He was all grown up and had a family of his own by that time, but every morning Lauren would come over to the house on Hawthorne Street and braid my hair so that I would be presentable when I went to school. I would graduate from high school in Dayton, Ohio at the Central High School. And I thought, well, Papa probably wants me to stay home and look after everyone, rather become the mother of the house. I was very surprised to find out that Papa wanted me to go to college. I was overwhelmed and thrilled. I attended Oberlin College and I studied Latin and English, and I enjoyed my college years. In fact, I am still very good friends with one of my college mates, gentleman by the name of Henry Haskell. In fact, if I might share a secret with you, I think I may have found my Mr. Right. Henry and I have grown very close. As I say, when I graduated with my degree, I decided, well, now what? I came back to Dayton and I began teaching school. I taught at the high school. I taught there several years, but while I was teaching, I also worked at the Wright Cycle Company. You may have heard of this place, a little storefront my brothers built, and well, they manufactured their own cycles, the Wright Flyer. And I worked many times at the counter. I answered the phone, took care of customers, and sometimes I swept the floors. But I was very involved with my brothers and their experiments in the world of flight. And it made me just thrilled to be at the forefront of such wonderful experiments. Now, can I tell you a little bit about my two brothers, Wilbur and Orville? They were indeed geniuses, and I don't use that term lightly. Sometimes folks would ask me, wherever did your brothers acquire this trait, or was it inherited that they were such mechanical geniuses? Well, sometimes Papa likes to take credit for that, but then he realizes it was really our mother, Susan. Our brothers, why, they inherited that trait of engineering genius from our mother. As Papa always liked to say, Susan can fix anything. Now, would you like to know a little bit about their experiments?
Sure.
They didn't always work out. They had their tragedies and their difficulties along the way. But my brothers were determined to learn everything they could about the flight. And how is it that a bird can fly and make it look so easy? Well, it's not quite that easy for humans. But my brothers experimented and experimented, and pretty soon those experiments were getting rather expensive. By that time, I had used all of my savings from my salary as a teacher, and, well, we were getting a bit desperate. But my brothers weren't going to be beaten by something as little and trivial as not having the money to experiment. They managed to find the money, and they kept their experiments going. And on that day in December of 1903, they would prove that man could indeed fly. And not everybody was impressed about the crazy Wright brothers and their thing called a flying machine. In fact, the newspapers really weren't interested in even covering this miraculous feat down in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. I was sort of the press agent, and I tried. And some of the newspapers grudgingly would write an article on the crazy Wright brothers who claim they can fly. One of the reporters even said that my brothers were able to stay in the air for several hours, flying hundreds of miles. Well, that's very far from the truth. But indeed, my brothers are first in flight. Any other questions?
Right. How did you find out that they had conducted a successful flight?
We received a cablegram. It was nearing Christmas, and we received a cablegram at our house in Dayton and Hawthorne Street. And the boys said that they had been in the air for so many minutes and they had a successful flight and they would be home by Christmas. And we were so excited because we always enjoyed spending the time together at Christmas. It was very important to our family. And so Papa was thrilled, although at first I'm not sure Papa was a true believer. It would be some time before Papa would fly. The first time he did fly, it was with Orville at the controls. At first, he was very nervous, but as he got up into the air, Papa started shouting at Orville, "Take it higher, boy! Take it higher!" So eventually, Papa believed in his boys, the fly boys from Dayton.
Um, uh, you talked about going to college. I just want to confirm you are the only person in your family to have a college degree. Is that correct?
Yes, I was the only one of the children. Of course, my brother and sister, Otis and Ida, they were twins. They only survived a few days. My brother Wilbur, he had planned to go to college. In fact, he was hoping to perhaps study engineering at Harvard. Papa would have liked that he would study divinity and theology, but Wilbur really was going to study engineering. But unfortunately, when Wilbur was in high school, he had a rather peculiar accident. However, Papa says it wasn't an accident. You see, the boys were playing street hockey with some other young boys, and one of the boys hit Wilbur in the face with a hockey stick. And Wilbur was badly injured. In fact, he lost several teeth and his jaw was badly injured. But it went far beyond that. After the accident, Wilbur didn't attend school anymore, and he would have graduated at the very top of his class. He became a recluse. He insisted that Mama's illness was keeping him at home, but it seemed that he was just changed. He was so frightened of being out with other people. I must say that during that time, he read tremendous amounts of information on all the experiments that scientists and engineers were doing in Europe on this miracle of flight. They wrote paper after paper, but they never really produced a flying machine. But poor Wilbur, he never graduated. Hell, and neither did Orville. He just simply didn't show up. But both of them, they had such native intelligence, and I do believe they are geniuses.
Geniuses, but then, when they were away in North Carolina, I believe it was you that was taking care of all the correspondence and all the bills and all. Were they good at that kind of thing, the bookkeeping, and what were they weak
Oh,
at, I guess?
to this very day, I am still chasing down receipts that those two can't seem to find. They don't seem to realize the importance of keeping very, very strict records. And I must say, I'm very meticulous. And they are so meticulous in their experiments, keeping very, very intense, meticulous data on everything they do, but not when it comes to managing the finances. So I've taken it upon myself all these years. It's just easier for me to do the books. Otherwise, we end up with such a jumble, we never know how much money we've spent and how much money we have yet to spend. But I enjoy it every moment. In fact, I left my teaching position in order that I could spend more time helping my brothers. And as I say, I've been their press agent. I'm the one who gets out there and gets the word out to the newspapers that these flyboys in Dayton have really produced a miracle.
Now, in addition to the invention of flight, you were also involved in another world-changing event, the suffragist movement. Can you talk about
Yes,
that?
yes. I've been the president of the Dayton Women's Club, and for many, many years, I have been involved in the movement. And in fact, Papa and Orville have actually gone to some of the marches that we've held. In fact, I was in Dayton recently and attended a march with hundreds of ladies. Well, I met ladies from Kentucky and Indiana and ladies from all over Ohio. Many of us rode our bicycles in the parade. But I think it is very important that we do have the vote. After all, women are just as capable as making those decisions as men. Oh, I must point out, I will be at the Dayton's Women's Club in, let me see, it's quite far into the distant future. It's on April 22nd of 2025. I will be speaking at the Dayton Women's Club. It's a Thursday evening, so we'd love to have guests.
I'm hoping, was that an invitation? That's
Oh, certainly. We'd
all
love
right.
to see you there.
I will put that down on the calendar. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to cover, which was do you have any anecdotes or stories that you could share that about you and your brothers that would surprise people?
I think I think the most interesting thing doesn't really involve me so much, but I think how did they ever really find that first little kernel that began to grow in them about flight? And I think it's a rather humorous little anecdote. You see, Papa always brought us gifts when he was returning from his missionary work. And oh, we couldn't wait until he came home and we'd be searching through his pockets to find the presents that he'd brought us. Well, on one occasion, Papa brought a little gift for Orville and Wilbur. It was a little heliocopter. It was made of bamboo and rubber bands and so on, but you could wind this little heliocopter up and then it would flutter right up into the air, and for a few moments it would fly. And then, of course, when the little rubber band was all unfurled, then it would crash to the ground. Well, Wilbur and Orville played and played and played with that little heliocopter until they just plain wore it out. Next thing, what did they do? They took it apart to, I believe the term is reverse engineering. And they discovered that, well, they could make one. So they began making these little heliocopters, and they made them bigger and bigger and bigger until they found out that bigger wasn't always best, because as the object got bigger, it wouldn't fly. In fact, it would barely get off the ground and then crash into 100 pieces when it hit the floor. So it was a learning experience for them. And eventually they would understand that there was more to just having the object powered into the sky. It had to be controlled. And I must say, when we went to France, and of course, we took everything with us, including the dismantled flyer, the crowds in France were amazing. There were just hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people who would come to the airfield to watch those flyboys from Dayton. Some of the newspapers in America were still rather, um, oh, doubtful. Some of them even calling these boys from Dayton nothing more than grease monkeys. But the crowds in France were amazing. Why, the King of Italy wanted to fly, and he did fly. And many of the ladies were very anxious to fly with Orville. He was rather shy about the ladies, but he did so enjoy entertaining them. In fact, some folks think Orville might have been responsible for a fashion trend Well, you know the French are very, very interested in their haute couture. Well, when a lady goes up into an aeroplane, her skirts would be flying up over her head, which would be most unseemly. Well, Orville had a solution. Before the lady was seated in the aeroplane, he simply took a piece of rope and tied it just below the lady's knees in order to keep her skirt down. Well, this provoked a new fashion called the hobble skirt. I don't know if Orville really can take credit for the fashion trend, but, well, we'll let him have that because he so enjoyed flying with the ladies.
You sure that wasn't your idea? Um, um, let's see. Just a final question would be, how would you like to be remembered yourself?
Oh, I would like to be remembered as a very, very good teacher. I loved teaching. I loved being with the young people, and it was painful for me to see some of the young men that were in my classes that they would go off to the Great War. Some of them didn't return. I would love to be remembered that I had an impact on those young lives. But I suppose, being a bit conceited, I would like to be remembered as a very, very important, valued member of that wonderful duo, Orville and Wilbur Wright, and that I was essential in helping them get off the ground.
It's Five Boys from Dayton, right?
Yes, that's the Flyboys from Dayton.
All right. Did you have anything else to add that I missed or that you really wanted to
Oh, I
speak about?
think we covered everything. My little dog just passed through a moment ago. I don't know if she was looking for some snacks or treats, but she just passed through. She's very fond of sweet potatoes.